Zelaniec. I hope I got it right. His topic is Augur, augurem, videns, illusion and make-believe in societal life.
Yes.
After his talk, we have, of course, time for Q&A, and after that, a coffee break. So you have 45 minutes. Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this morning session. I have the privilege as the main and first speaker of the morning session to say these welcome words, and I'll also ask you an excuse for the delay. Sorry.
That's my fault.
Yes. So, allow me to stand in front of you, directly in front of you, because I feel sort of embarrassed standing behind the table. 45 minutes, you were saying?
45, yeah.
30 plus 10, more or less.
Right. But I mean, I'm warning you when you have only 10 left.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, I think there's an error in the problem with the microphone. Seems to be a problem with the microphone. And now, can anybody hear me? There's a squeaking. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Squeaking sound. Still squeaking.
Should I go for the video?
Maybe this one will function better. No, it's
Maybe the batteries.
maybe he doesn't like my voice. Maybe this microphone doesn't seem to be working at all.
Don't worry, I'll take it up. Just slowly.
Maybe the microphones here don't like my voice, that's the problem.
It has consciousness after all.
Sorry?
It has consciousness.
Yes, obviously. Even so, there is something to be a microphone. What it is like to be a microphone. Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, once again, excuse me for the delay. We took a taxi in the assumption that it's going to be quicker and faster than going by train, but it seems not to be quite true, at least not today. As far as the title of my talk is concerned, I think there's an error in it, for which I'm exclusively responsible. Societal life. I don't know if such a word as societal exists in the English language. Social life would be better, I suppose. It's more straightforward. Social life. So make-believe and pretenses, false pretenses in social life, illusions, all kinds of illusions in social life. As a word of explanation for those of you who are not so well versed in the ancient rhetorics, this quotation, Augur, augurem, videns, comes from, it's not an exact quotation, but it's a kind of paraphrase quotation from a chapter from chapter 24 of the second book of De Divinatione by Cicero, where he says that Cato would say he was stupefied to see one haruspex seeing another haruspex and not laughing in bashful acknowledgement of the illusion they both of them cultivate, as it were. The illusion of being able to predict the future from the intestines of birds, because that was the office of the haruspices. So, an illusion of there being something real in the practice of divination from the bowels of birds, to which both haruspices, both augurs are privy, but which they are unwilling to acknowledge openly. Only seeing one another they smile, bashfully acknowledging that they are parties to a common illusion cultivated within the Roman framework of the Roman society. So the exact quotation is Vetus aut autem illud catonis ad modum scitum est, qui miralis aevat non rideret harustox cum vidisse. He was stupefied that the harustox sing and another harustox didn't smile and laugh. Collective actions. There are two topics, proceeding now to the core of the matter, as it were. There are two prominent topics in Professor Gilbert's book. The topic of collective action, which looms quite large throughout the whole book, of course, and also the topic of collective belief. And the two are connected to one another as far as I understood correctly her text. In that they are both. I mean, in that the collective belief is spelled out in terms of collective action. Collectively acting or collective action is being jointly committed to trying to emulate, as far as it goes, a single actor, a single agent. And collective believing is being jointly committed to emulate a single believer, as far as it goes. But unfortunately, as far as I can discern, it doesn't go very far in most cases. In most cases, this collective belief or joint commitment to emulating a single believer amounts to just kind of social pressure on every single believer to behave in a way which doesn't arouse the suspicion that he in reality disbelieves the contents of collective belief. So, for instance, on page 193, for the sake of argument, I'm treating two things somewhat different on a par. Collective believing in matter-of-factly contents, let's say, and collectively believing or collective belief in axiological contents, even though I know that matters of fact and values are somewhat different, but there is something in common between them. And for the sake of argument, again, I beg your pardon if this argument goes so far from some of you, but for the sake of argument, in the spirit of Clarence Irving Lewis, I'm treating matters of fact and values on a par, believing in values and believing in facts, or believing in states of affairs. Maybe not very one-off, maybe general tendencies or general regularities or something like that. I'm treating this and believing in values on a par. So in the context of collectively valuing or collective axiology, Professor Gilbert says something like commitment in the belief that obviously she does treat these two things, beliefs in matters of fact and beliefs in values on a par too in some context at least. The joint commitment in the case of a commitment to the belief that certain item I has a certain value is achieved by each of the committed parties, of the committed individuals, the parties to this joint commitment of believing in the value of a certain item, by doing such things as confidently stating that item I has value V, refraining from calling this or its obvious corollaries into question, suggesting by actions and emotional expressions that item I has value B, suggesting by actions and emotional expressions, facial expressions, whatnot, not therefore acting contrary to the shared value or presumably shared value, nor reporting such contrary actions with bravado. Not reporting such contrary actions with bravado. I suppose the word bravado is supposed to mean something like enthusiastic approval, something like it. So this collective belief amounts to, in great many cases, this joint commitment to believing in either some matters of facts or general regularities or tendencies or essential regularities, or even, or on the other hand, values, to kind of making believe or behaving in a certain way as though one individually believed things which one doesn't necessarily believe on one's own. And this, as far as I can discern, this motive of shared belief, but not distributively shared, not in the sense of every party to the shared belief believes the content, respective contents individually, recurs many times in Professor Gilbert's book. For instance, in the case of Ned and Olive, if I remember well, trying to walk up a steep hill and both losing the belief in the feasibility of this enterprise after a moment, and yet remaining to be committed to the scope or to the goal, to the objective of climbing this steep hill. We believe that we are going to climb this hill, even though neither of them really individually believes that, but they keep up this fiction of believing collectively in the feasibility and the value of this enterprise. So there's a lot of social pressure, but also social fiction and doxastic fiction, should I say so, in this joint commitment to believing certain things collectively. Now, but this is not what I want to focus on. What I want to focus on instead is much rather another connection between the topic of collective belief and collective action. Another link which seems to exist between these two topics, other than the link which I mentioned before, which is explicit in Professor Gilbert's book, the link consisting in this, that collective belief is spelled out in terms of collective action. The same formula is applied to both cases. Collectively believing, collectively acting is being jointly committed to action or trying to emulate an action. Collectively believing is being jointly committed to emulating a single believer. In this first case, trying to emulate a single doer, a single actor, a single agent. In the second case, trying to emulate a single believer. But in both cases, being jointly committed to. So this is the first link, the explicit one, but the other one which I sort of undug from the text, from maybe not just the text of Professor Gilbert's book, but the general facts, lying open to every philosopher worthy of this name, is this, that in great many cases, collective action spelled out along Gilbertian lines. And for the sake of argument, I don't want to question the Gilbertian lines. I have my problems with commitment, the very concept of commitment which I voiced yesterday, and I continue to have those doubts even after the lobby discussions I conducted with both Professor Gilbert and some of you. But putting such things aside, I don't want to go deeper into this. I accept this account for the sake of argument. So collective action. In some cases, maybe not in the cases which Professor Gilbert very often uses as example. This gives the whole book, I don't want to criticize you, Margaret, but this gives your whole book a somewhat lopsided air, because you use very often such examples as having a common walk, or having a common chart, or having a common university library, or at the nastiest, it's something like having a strenuous walk to a distant shopping center. That's one of the most problematic examples which you ever use in your book. But the problem is, such examples reflect probably the nice atmosphere of the comfortable and sheltered life of an American philosopher, but they are far away from social experience or experience of social action of most of us, which will transpire from further examples I'm going to give. Let me have a sip of tea. And I have some cold, you see, that's the problem. Raffreddato, as they say in Italian. Beg your excuse. Because in great many cases for serious social action, such as promoting the cause of, well, let's start from a medium-range examples. For instance, a thing like this conference, this very conference. We are all example of joint commitment, aren't we? In sitting here, discussing here. Now, why do we do this? Why have we agreed to get involved into this joint commitment, this collective action of having a conference across Gilbert's book? The answer is not obvious. The answer is not obvious. In the case of a common walk, the question, why do you do this? Why have you embarked upon this common action, this joint commitment, is very obvious. It's so obvious that the question doesn't pose itself. It's not really askable. Because a walk is a very healthy and pleasant enterprise, to put it bluntly. But the same answer wouldn't work for an enterprise like our conference. It's certainly, I mean, it's certainly part of the truth. I don't deny this. But it's very pleasant and refreshing, and in all kinds profitable to philosophize away on your book. But it's not just this. With all due respect, it's not just this. It's also promoting the cause of philosophy, of deepening, you know, our insights into various delineations and articulations of social life and social action and joint commitment and whatnot, beyond the pleasure which we directly derive from discussing your book. So this is not the type of answer we give to the question, why have you engaged upon this work, is not directly transferable onto cases like this conference or any other philosophical conference, and it's not the whole truth in any event. It's an important part of the truth, no doubt about it, but it's not the whole truth. And in the case of promoting the cause, not just of social philosophy or philosophy of joint commitment, but for instance one's country, soldier, why have you become one? Why are you ready to shed blood? Because it makes fun, right? This might again be part of the truth, but it's not the whole truth. The whole truth is something like, at least it should be. In many cases it's just because it makes fun, but in great many other cases it's because one believes, collective belief again, individually, but as a part of a collective, one believes in the cause of one's country. Okay? One becomes a soldier because one believes in the cause because one believes in the existence, in the very existence of an entity called one's country, and is not nominalistic about it. One doesn't say, well, my country is just a fiction, an eidolon foria, and something like a figmentum mentis, something like, you know, an abstract set of individuals inhabiting a certain territory, and this territory as a unit of physical geography and whatnot. No, one goes beyond it. One says, I do believe in the very existence of my country. I do believe, for starters, and second, I do believe in the worthiness of my country. My country is something deserving being fought for, being defended, being shed blood for, and a great many other things. And there is a number of other beliefs which are concomitant upon the first two, and then as a result, I'm ready to present a complete explanation of why I have become a soldier. Okay, so being a soldier, again, it's not a typical example of a social action, at least not of the Gilbertian sort of social action, but it's a pattern, it's a complex pattern, it's a matrix of types, of potentialities, of possibilities, of types of actions. So it's a kind of institution, or a set or a system of institutions. I'm very sorry that my great colleague Professor Giuseppe Lorini, a worldwide known specialist on philosophy of institutions, could not be present this morning with us because he would have told us something more about institutions. So institutions are types of social action as well, or possibilities of social action, and to participate, to be party, not just one-off event, to walk, to a nice chat in a university library, but to be party to something like a country, or an army, or a church, or a political, or a club even, or a learned society, or something like it. One has to believe in a lot of things. And that not individually, not just on one's own, but collectively. It's part of the collective of persons, parties to the action, and those who support this action maybe without even being parties to it, and so on and so on. So there's a lot of collective believing and collective beliefs involved in and justifying and explaining why one has become a member of this institution, which is nothing else but a system of possibilities and potentialities of types of social action, collective action. And so, in other words, this connection between collective belief and collective action, which I flatter myself to have undug from Professor Gilbert's book, but also from things as they are in reality, is that in order for us to take part, to partake, to participate in social action, we have to participate in social and collective beliefs of certain sorts, the right sorts. Of course, you will reproach me with observing probably that in great many cases we are parties to social social systems, to institutions, to clubs, to churches, political parties and so on, not because we have decided that we are ready to share any collective beliefs, but because we are born into it, for instance, by being born a citizen of country XY, or because we felt attracted. This is sociologically seen a very important factor, being attracted by a group of people. We join a club, we join a church sometimes, we join a political party because we like these people, not because we have spent a lot of thought, reflective thought on the rightness or correctness or wrongness or whatnot of the collective beliefs cherished in the body of this institution, but because we simply like those people. And sometimes we are swamped by social phenomenon like a stampede or fashion or hysteria, social hysteria or something like it. So we become party to a collective action, not because we have any particular justifications for it to be spelled out in terms of shared belief, but because we just got pulled into it by quasi-naturalistic reasons. Sometimes there are no reasons why we are parties to a social action, but just quasi-naturalistic explanations and causes. There are causes but no reasons. But these are however numerous such cases are, they are not the whole story. There are cases in which we either are able to provide reasons why we are parties to a collective action, exposed as it were, or we in advance reflect on possible reasons, including our sharing certain collective beliefs or our possible sharing of certain collective beliefs, and as a result, we decide more or less reflexively, more or less consciously, to become party of this institution, of this club, of this political party, or church, or whatever. So in some cases it's very important. In some cases it's not just a make-believe. It's not a pretext. It's not a faule Ausrede, as they say in German, vorgegaute Kälte vorspiegeln, or something like that. Just a pretext, just an explanation of what doesn't really deserve an explanation, but or it doesn't deserve a teleological explanation, but just a naturalistic explanation. But in some cases, it really works. It really works this way. We reflect on certain beliefs, and we decide that we are ready to share them with other members of the same institution, and then we decide to become members of this institution, one way or another. So in some cases, it really works this way. So to summarize it in a few words, the important link between social action and social institution, and social belief, or collective action and collective belief in some cases, is that collective beliefs are a precondition or a set of preconditions, necessary preconditions of participating in this collective action, in some type of collective action, and also part of a teleological or rational explanation of why one has become party to this social institution of this collective action. Now, the critical question which I wanted to raise in my talk is exactly how sincere such collective beliefs are, or have to be. Augur and videns, they participate in a kind of a church, ancient Roman church, or ancient Roman religious organization, one of whose tenets is that you can divine the future, or guess the future. Can you say divine? Divination, divining to divine? Divine the future from the bowels of birds. That was the office of haruspices. You have to believe in this in order to be a haruspis, right? But you don't. So Cato is wondering, stupefied, why you don't laugh or smile bashfully at another haruspis singing on the street. Because he knows that you have to believe in something which you don't believe in, and you know that he has to believe in something which you know he doesn't. So you should smile, but you don't. So you make Cato stupefied. Let me first of all say that in great many cases, this question, how sincere a certain belief is not really askable. It's not really askable. It's a stupid question, it's a philosophical question. It's not the same story. It's stupid questions are not, it's a philosophical question, but philosophy is reputed, is well known for asking questions which nobody would have asked if it hadn't been for philosophy. So how sincere is it? In great many cases, we are really astounded when asked, how sincerely do you believe in this or that? Do you believe that the earth revolves around the sun? I do. I do believe such things. You do too. But how sincerely do you believe in it? Well, it's a stupefying question, isn't it? Why? Because we have accepted such contents as that the earth revolves around the sun from trustworthy persons, put this way, from our teachers, for instance. At this stage, I must confess, I don't have a very full-fledged theory of collective belief. For the sake of argument, I'm ready to accept Gilbertian analysis of it, even though I have problems with it. And I tend to assume that in many cases, collective belief is just as the vilified summative you believe, we believing that such and such. For instance, I think it is a collective belief in our cultural circle that the earth does revolve around the sun, even though, or that Rome is the capital of Italy, or that America was discovered by Columbus, or a host of other things of this sort. Even though we do believe such things, don't we? Do we not? We do, of course. And this amounts very much to having learned it from trustworthy persons, or from persons we have been taught to treat as trustworthy, and knowing about other persons in our cultural circle, in our country, for instance, or in our social class, having made similar experiences in their past. So this is the basis of the common consensus about the earth revolving around the sun, even though we haven't scrutinized the Copernican proofs for it. Have you? How many of you have ever read the Revolutionibus Orbium Celestium in order to find out about the real proofs about the earth revolving around the sun? We haven't. Most of us haven't ever. Or to give an example with the capital of a country, an example with which I stupefy very often, I stupefy too, not just the Haru speakers, but also philosophy professors stupefy the students. I ask my students, are you so sure that Warsaw is the capital of Poland? Everyone knows. We Poles, maybe you Italians know, but we Poles do believe that Warsaw is the capital of Poland. Are you sure that it is the capital of Poland? Yes, we are, of course, that's a matter of course, and there's no discussion about it, no doubt about it. Well, how do you know it? Have you checked the proofs? Have you checked the evidence available? The real knockdown evidence for Warsaw being the capital of Poland is part of the Polish constitution, but the real proof of it would be to have read the original copy of the institution signed by the Marshal, the Speaker of the Polish Parliament. That would be the first-hand proof of the contents we all believe in, namely that Warsaw is the capital of Poland. And next to none has done this. So we all share our belief in Warsaw being the capital of Poland with all the other Poles on the basis of hearsay, more or less. And yet we trust that the capital is the capital of Poland. We trust that Warsaw is the capital of Poland. And in this stage, so the question is not really sensible, askable. How sincere do you believe these things? Well, I do believe them because everybody believes them. Everybody in my country, everybody in my social class, everybody in my cultural circle, everybody in my church, everybody in my political party, everybody in my club, and so on and so on. And I know that everybody does, or at least I think, again, this might be an error, but most of the time I do believe that everybody believes in Warsaw being the capital of Poland. And this is the basis of my trust. So that if I'm hard-pressed to produce evidence for the truthfulness of my belief, I can get doubts about it. Well, I haven't really seen the original copy of the Polish Constitution signed by the Marshal, the Speaker of the Polish Parliament, which is the only first-hand source of first-hand evidence of the truthfulness of the proposition versus the capital of Poland. I haven't seen this document, so maybe it's not true after all. I can become doubts, but I can become such doubts only after I've been asked about the evidence my belief is based on. So in a great many cases, there is no let's say no gap between really believing that P and pretending to be believing in P. No gap into which the philosopher, the social philosopher, can press his question about the sincerity of it. This question will remain unanswered and ununderstood as long as he hasn't found any possibility to persuade the believer that his belief might not after all be true. And in great many cases such a possibility does not exist, has to be created first. But in some cases it can be, such a possibility does exist, especially in the cases when the belief is not just due to our having absorbed various tenets from our teachers or from our parents or from our persons of authority or persons of trust, but is a matter of more or less explicit agreement. In the talk of Leo yesterday, we heard something about collective believing in something. Leo from Oslo. Collective believing in something being spelled out in terms of settling for P. The collective believes that, or collective believe that P means something like settled for P, right? 119, something like it. So in some cases there is this moment of explicit or semi-explicit settling for a belief, in which case, people feel committed or obliged, maybe not necessarily to really interiorizing the contents of the belief in question, but pretending as if they believed in it, behaving in a corresponding way, abstaining from challenging, from defying the belief, and so on and so on, things which I quoted at the beginning of my talk from Professor Gilbert's book. And so there is, to put this, go to the extremes, as it were. In some cases it's a matter of being bullied and brainwashed into behaving as if one believed something which one doesn't really believe. And no doubt there is a lot of social pressure in our societies, in our clubs, in our political parties, in our churches, in our states, of course, and supra-state organizations like the European Union. There is a lot of brainwashing, a lot of social pressure, moral pressure, or quasi-moral pressure into believing or into behaving as though one believed various things which one doesn't necessarily have any evidence to believe, and which one hasn't heard, as distinct from Rome being the capital of Italy or also being the capital of Poland, from any trustworthy persons. One hears such things from persons which seem anything but trustworthy, and yet one is bullied into believing them, or not believing them really, but behaving as though one believed them. So in some cases such question, do you sincerely believe this thing, this P, is sensibly askable, sensibly asked, can be posed, can be raised, and provokes and irritates, provokes anger, provokes a certain disconcertment. And yet, because it unmasks a great deal of hypocrisy which there is in our social life, hypocrisy, like the hypocrisy pinned down by Cicero in his book on De Divinatione, from which I quoted this passage on the Haruspikes. And yet, I would say, it's not just hypocrisy. There are some more edifying aspects of this phenomenon of pretended belief or make-believe or fiction, of keeping up the fiction of collective belief in tenets of the European Union or whatnot. First of all, I still have some 10 minutes, so that, as I told you, I don't have any full-fledged theory of collective belief, but I wanted to make one point clear. I do believe in collective beliefs in the sense that first of all, that there are collective contents of belief. I mean, in analytical philosophy doesn't seem to have a very important distinction which exists in phenomenology. In phenomenology, but also in all philosophy derived from Brentano, from the great Austrian or German-Austrian thinker Franz Brentano. However, the distinction between, even though Brentano himself didn't make this distinction, but it was made in various ways by various followers, various students of Brentano, the distinction between the contents of a belief, the contents of a sentence, the contents of a propositional attitude, and the act in which this content is being actualized, is being thought, is being believed, is being asserted, being doubted, and whatnot. And this distinction is not made. At least I can't find I can't honestly say, I cannot sincerely say I've found this distinction made explicitly in any analytical philosophy known to me. It would make things easier, because it's very easy to admit that there are collective contents or shared contents. This is not just Brentano, it's also Frege and a lot of other thinkers who admitted that contents of belief, of propositional attitudes in general, are shared, are public, are accessible to most everybody, floating free, as it were, frei schwebend. Whereas the acts in which these contents are being thought of, asserted, doubted, called into question, and so on, are individual. Unless, of course, we believe, like Christian List has taught us to admit the possibility of, at least, unless we believe in collective thinkers or collective consciousnesses, which would produce collective acts of believing collective contents. But unless we have admitted this possibility, unless we have abandoned epistemological individualism, according to which there are just individual thinkers, individual believers, individual minds, individual egos, unless we admit some sort of collective ego, we can stay happy with admitting that we have just individual acts of believing, doubting, questioning, wishing, and so on, directed, however, to shared collective contents, which are not shared or collective in any derivative fashion, which are primarily collective, which are collective per se, as it were, collective contents, such as, for instance, the content of the sentence that the earth revolves around the sun. This is a collective content. If I believe it myself, the act is mine, of course. The act is mine, the act is yours, the act is his or hers, the act is individual, but the content is shared. And please agree with my observation. I'm not trying to bully you into anything. That 99.99% of the contents of our beliefs, however private, are shared. There are very few contents which we have thought out by ourselves. I have thought out maybe 2 or 3 thoughts out of myself on my own, entirely on my own. But most of what I believe has been taken over from the general folklore, from my teachers, from my parents, from persons of trust, and so on. So collective or shared contents, individual acts. Collective stroke shared contents, individual acts. But even if those contents are shared, as actualized within the individual mind of every single believer, or maybe not quite believer, wannabe believer, would-be believer, something like, or pretending believer, they are imbued, they are flavored, they are colored with something particular by this added or contributed by this particular believer. And as a result, if we have a collective of persons collectively believing, or even individually disbelieving, or doubting, or agnostic vis-a-vis certain contents, those contents, those shared contents, get flavored and imbued and enriched by various individual contributions by those individual believers, and they get more detailed, more spelled out, more concrete, more specific, more determinate. They suffer an epistemological gain. Suffer is the wrong word for it. They sustain an epistemological gain. They get better, to put it bluntly, in virtue of being believed by so many collectively, or maybe not quite believed, or pretendingly believed, just pretendingly believed, but maybe just pretendingly believed. Even so, they are cherished by individual minds, and as a result, they are flavored and colored by the particular properties of those individual minds, and in this way they get richer and more interesting and more specific and more rich in conclusions to be drawn afterwards by some further minds who are going to reflect on the same contents. So there is a value added, as it were, to shared contents as believed or pretendingly believed by collectives of individual minds, even if they are not really believed by them, but reflected on or thought of or called into doubt or questioned or wished for or something like it. And also there is a practical gain for the collectives in question. The collectives in question, namely, they can reach collective goals better if they persevere in pretending to believe in certain contents which they don't really believe in certain contents. For instance, there is a lot of Euroscepticism around in Europe these later years or days. You know about it. But we sort of officially persevere in believing that the European Union exists for one thing and it's a good thing for another. And maybe, even if we are losing faith in both or in either, we will achieve, and I'm trustful and I'm hopeful we will achieve, a creation of a supranational community, a real European Union within a few generations maybe, even though we are losing faith in it, but persevering in action on the basis of this pretended, just, I would say, hypocritical belief, but yet a belief which is translated into action, we will achieve a result which will astonish ourselves, and as a result of which we will reacquire the belief in the existence of and the value of a nation state or supranation state or whatever it will be in the end. And also, you remember certainly there is an, so to speak, there is an epistemological gain to be drawn from shared contents being cherished by many, even though they don't cherish it quite in the right doxastic attitude, they don't believe it really. There is a practical gain, achieving collective ends which are laid out in those collective contents, and there is also an educative profit to be drawn for every individual involved, taken singly, taken separately. Namely, he can, or she can, or they can learn something from the exercise of going through the motions of believing a belief which he or she doesn't really believe. After all, transform herself or himself into something else and hopefully something better if the belief is really intelligent, a smart one. You remember certainly the famous Pascal's wager from this celebrated fragment 233 in Brunschwig's arrangement of the thought by Pascal, when he says about, when he proposes the idea that it pays off better to believe in God rather than not believe in God because such and such. This is of side importance for us at the moment, but the important moment comes later in the same fragment when he says, in order to, even if you don't really believe in God, you should behave as though you believed in it. You should say masses, you should take holy water, you should make the signs of the cross and so on, behave like believer, in order to, after a time, really acquire the belief which you now lack. Again, this has called forth the accusations of Pascal's promoting hypocrisy in religious matters, and this is not very far from the main strand of my talk: hypocrisy in social life, hypocrisy in group life, collective life. But even if it is at a certain stage, even if it looks at a certain stage of hypocrisy, it does or can have individual gain, not just for the group, not just for the contents, but also for the individual believer who can educate himself or herself, become something else, become something better, hopefully if the contents are really smart, and get another person, as it were, get another person perfect himself or herself by pretending to believe in something which is beyond him or her at the moment, but after a time it will go into its blood, or his blood, or her blood. That's all. Thank you very much.
So weird. Thank you.
Was perfect.
Perfect. You still had 3 minutes actually. So 3 more minutes for Q&A now.
Thanks very much.
Yes.
I'm Leo from the University of Oslo.
This is the guy I was referring to. Yes. Right.
So that's what I want to
Yes.
ask about. I just want to get clear on the view which, as I understand you're attributing to Gilbert,
Yes.
and also the view, rather less importantly, that you seem to attribute to me, which I feel a bit bad about because you were looking at me and I nodded, but then it became clear that I shouldn't have nodded.
You're not story, don't
Yeah.
get upset.
Okay. So, of Gilbert's account of collective belief, I understood you correctly, you say that it requires some kind of individual pretense, like where there's a collective belief, the individual parties to the collective belief are required to pretend as though they themselves personally had that same belief. And I just wanted to say, as I understand Gilbert, that's very much not something she's committed to. She's very emphatic that there's no need for individuals to pretend to personally believe it. But maybe you'll point something different. Maybe you think that despite her saying that, she's nonetheless committed to it. I think you're quoting from a paper about shared values.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so, and then the other thing is that the way you characterize Gilbert's project, you say that collective belief is explained in terms of collective action. Maybe that's right in a sense because collective belief is explained in terms of what she calls acting as a body. But as I understand her, that's not the same thing that she calls collective action. So all it means in that case, because acting or doing is very broadly construed, is believing as a body. So I'm slightly unsure about that one. And then just about my thing about settling.
About
I was
what?
not saying
Settling.
Yeah. So I wasn't saying settling. I wasn't meaning to do with settling for, as in just accepting or something like this. I mean, I was talking about settling a question. So, so I think that can be a perfectly epistemically sincere thing to do. That's right.
Yes.
Well, Margaret said yesterday that she wasn't a Kant scholar, if I recall well. Well, I'm not a Gilbert scholar either, so maybe I'm reading too much into her text. Mea culpa, in this case. I meant to say various expressions which she employs in her book lend themselves, at least in a cynical person like myself, to this interpretation. Maybe I'm over-interpreting her. When she says that joint commitment to belief in an item I's value will be achieved by doing such things as confidently stating that item I has this value and so on. It sounds in my... You see, one thing which I left out of my talk for the lack of time. I come from Poland, right? And as you probably know, you are maybe too young to know it, but Poland suffered for 40 years from a dictatorship. Lived in a dictatorship, not an authoritarian, but a very strange left-wing dictatorship, exotic to you, most of you, in which you were sort of committed to believing in a certain secular religion. And especially if you want to advance your career, in profession, in social life, practically everywhere, you have to become a member of the Communist Party. That was the communist dictatorship, Communist Party, which involved committing oneself to a certain set of beliefs, rather complex and involved and obscure beliefs, which next to nobody sincerely believed. So that was the case of Cicero, Haruspitzer videns. Two party members met one another on the street and smiled because they both knew that they were pretending to believe in something which they didn't. I don't know about the situation in other communist countries, but in Poland, next to nobody believed in Marxism. Yeah? It was just a lip service paid to this ideology, at least not in Marxism, the Soviet way, spelled out the Soviet way. So, having grown up, in fact, in a country like this, one tends to be rather cynical about, behaving in a certain way and abstain from defying the assertions and whatnot, because I know such things from first-hand experience in real life, from situations far less comfortable than having a common walk or having a common shop in the university library. So I admit I might have over-interpreted Gilbert in some places, but just as a sign of warning, a warning sign I wanted to make clear that there are certain limits. And as far as the settling issue is concerned, well, I fully agree with you that when we have a Habermasian Zwangslose Diskurs, a force free from coercion, discourse free from coercion, when we exchange our opinions on certain matters, when we finally settle the problem in the sense of arriving at a common conclusion, we have acquired a sincere belief. This I fully agree with, but the problem is in some cases this, especially for real life organizations like boards of directors or military committees or governmental committees and so on, which work under the pressure of time, they have to reach a consensus even before they have fully and sincerely and honestly convinced all of its members. They have to work very much with the principle put up or shut up, right? Sort of bullying or terrorizing some of its members into pretending to be believing something which they really don't. But for the common, again, the story which I raised, the keyword from Gilbert's book, mouthpiece. The common mind is given by him or her who works or who functions as a mouthpiece of a common body. And this mouthpiece, the pronouncements of this mouthpiece might not reflect the real beliefs of the members of the common body, especially the common body is a formal organization which works under the pressure of time, circumstances, enemy, and whatnot and whatnot. When everybody has to let himself or herself be persuaded into adopting a common line, even if at the bottom of their hearts they don't share this common line. So there are certain perils and certain limits on sincerity. But on the whole, I agree. Yes.
Christian?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's helpful to distinguish between a number of different types of collective belief, because I think we use that term in a variety of different ways, and want to explore where we would locate the varieties of collective belief that you identified. So I think the first type of collective belief is just a summative one. So collective belief in the summative sense is just a belief that either all or most of us hold. And that might just be a statistical fact that an opinion poll identifies. So we need not be in any way aware of the fact that all or most of us hold this particular belief. Yes. A second type is stronger and more collective, namely, that would be a common belief. That's a belief that all or most of us hold, and in addition, our holding this belief is a matter of common awareness or a matter of common knowledge. This type actually has a sub-variety, namely the sub-variety of the falsely ascribed common belief. That's the kind of situation where each of us thinks that the others hold that belief, and also that the others think that this belief is held as a matter of common awareness, when in fact, privately, deep down, we don't hold that belief. And I think there are some resonances in what you said in relation to this sub-variety of common belief. The third type of collective belief is what people in the collective intentionality literature sometimes call a we-mode belief. So that's the kind of belief that involves putting yourself into a particular, let's say, group-oriented position. The idea is you can put on different hats. You can either wear your personal hat, or you can wear your hat as a member of this committee, or a member of this state, or a member of this group agent. And then depending on which hat you wear, that switches on or off a different mode, and then the we-mode belief might be different from your I-mode belief. And then the final, fourth type, would be a corporate belief, and that would indeed be a belief that is held not by the individuals, but by the group agent as a collective system in its entirety. And of course, whether or not there are corporate beliefs depends very much on whether we recognize the existence of group agents. But I think that the varieties of collective belief that you had in mind when you spoke about pretending were, I think, probably either this variety of we-mode belief, where you are constrained in a society to put on a particular public hat and play the role of a different persona than your individual mode, or it could be the falsely attributed common belief. Anyway, I just thought I'd flag this taxonomy to try to place you inside it.
Yes. Well, thank you, Christian. That was very useful. I am aware of those differentiations within the category of common belief. I sort of gestured at several of them during my talk. Unfortunately, didn't have the time or the energy to go into it. But I'm fully aware. For instance, the difference between there are more levels to it. The difference between the statistically common belief and the common knowledge belief can be illustrated by this example. I would say that we all believe that the Earth revolves around the Sun is probably the common knowledge belief, common knowledge collective belief. I personally, I don't know about you, but I personally believe that pi, the number pi, is a transcendental number. I think, but maybe I severely underestimated the level of mathematical knowledge of most citizens of the European Union, but I think this is not a common belief. But maybe, as a matter of fact, it is believed by most everybody in the European Union. The number pi is a transcendental number. How many of you know that pi is a transcendental number? Not many. So it's not you do, okay. So it's not a common belief after all. But it could have been, So unawares to myself, it could have been a common belief in the sense which hasn't yet reached the stage of common knowledge, common belief, right? And there are even other levels and stages. For instance, a very short philological remark. In English, in order to express common beliefs, you usually use the pronoun we. But in several continental languages, there is a thing which is unknown in English, and a so-called unpersonal or impersonal pronoun or impersonal construction. In German, for instance, there's a famous Heideggerian pronoun man. Man glaubt, man weiß, man hofft, man befürchtet. I know, but my English teachers told me, maybe they induced me into error, that's tasted of paper somewhat in English. It does. Well, in English there are various variants. In English, sometimes they say they, sometimes they say one, sometimes they say you believe, you fear, and so on. But none of these constructions corresponds directly to the impersonal construction in German, which is man or man in Danish, where it was invented, or in Dutch. In Italian they say si. Si vede, si canta, si crede, si teme, etc., etc. It believes oneself, as it were. The same thing we say in Polish, się. We say się wierzy, się obawia, się myśli. There is a novel written in the 70s by a Polish novelist with the title się. Just się, expressing like man in German, like man in German, expressing this impersonal attitude towards shared belief. I mean, the advantage which man has over they, or over you, or over we, is that it doesn't express any particular distance or lack of distance. It's completely neutral. Was man glaubt man eben. It's not a commitment, it's not a distancing oneself, it's not a insinuation that you personally believe it when you say you believe that such and such. So this might be a sub-level within one of the upper levels we should distinguish. It's very useful. I work it into the written version of my paper if it ever comes about. Which is doubtful for some reasons. But it's very useful. Thank you very much. Yes.
Professor Wilbert.
I thought I might say a few things in the discussions because people may not be here at the last. Look, I think one thing I want to say, you brought up the Polish experience and really the sort of horrible situation in which you were sort of constrained to say certain things, but you didn't believe it. And that's a very poignant and important historical example. And I think we all have experiences of going for walks. It's not just me and my elevated sort of lucky life. So that's a common human thing. But
I was teasing you.
Yeah, okay. But yes, I know. But still, I think these are fundamental, basic things for us all. But so I really just wanted to say that the fact that according to my model or account of collective belief, it's possible for the collective to believe something, or for us to believe something collectively when none of us does. That's sort of a logical point, which I suppose I accept, so that being the theory. It doesn't mean it's a good thing, and it doesn't mean that it's attractive, and it doesn't mean that it's the ideal, and I just wanted to sort of emphasize that, because when you say that something's possible, you're certainly not endorsing it from a value point of view, and it's just a point to emphasize.
Yes. Thank you very much. I'll reconsider it, I promise. Yes.
We probably still have time for a quick follow-up from Roberto.
First of all, I don't know why, but I was rejoicing somehow while listening to you. I don't know why, but there was a feeling. Probably because of a distinction to which I come immediately between the content and the act. So it's really, I mean, I understand. I'm no scholar, Gilbert, and I'm pretty slow in understanding. But that situation you just described, in which, in fact, there is collective belief without being individual one. And of course, you said, I'm not pretending that it is a good thing, and so on and so on. But that's not the objection, in my opinion, and probably in part of what Wojciech was saying. Namely, the objection would be that having a belief is taking stance, making a position, what the phenomenologists say, a position which in fact is a kind of endorsement, engagement in a way, engagement toward the truth and toward a sort of a series of behaviors and so on. Well, maybe this question, more as an objection, is not too far from Leo's one. Maybe it's different, I'm not sure. But why should one keep the same term, belief, for collective belief which doesn't apparently need an act of belief, and for individual one which does? That was my point.
Sorry, but it was too long.
Well, an example which springs into my mind at this moment is an operation, a medical operation, when there are several doctors involved, a very severe operation, and the official line is that the operation will be successful. And next to no doctor involved in the team believes that personally, and yet they persevere in doing so, pretending as though they believed it, in order to enhance the chances of the success, and eventually success does come. So such things happen, and this is one of the reasons why we should not step out of, not always, at least, not without serious reasons, should we step out of our team collectively pretending to be believing something, if the goal is noble enough, let's say, like the success of an operation. In other cases, we should reconsider, of course. And there is a phenomenon, one thing which I didn't mention during my talk is the phenomenon investigated in the 70s and later onwards, from the 70s onwards, by Irving James and other social psychologists, a phenomenon called groupthink, when too much engagement into certain collective tenets, collectively accepted tenets, keeps the collective from achieving its goals and frustrates its, and leads to its annihilation even in some cases, some dramatic cases. So one has to keep watchful eye on the respectability, let's say, and the achievability of the goals of the collectively believed in goals and causes and whatnot. And there is no a priori answer to questions like this one. One has to decide on a case-to-case basis, I would say, depending on what the circumstances are. But in some cases, well, but maybe that's more or less everything I have to say at the moment. I mean, this the very distinction between the contents of a belief, which is shared, and the act of the belief, which is individual, is exotic, more or less exotic to analytic philosophy. It's a heritage of Brentano and all kinds of philosophy which resulted from Brentano, but it's not known in analytic philosophy, at least not well known. It is.
Wolf itself.
Wolf itself, okay.
Proposing as an
proposition is the result of the proposing. He has a fourfold distinction, but of course it comes much after the time.
Yes, yes.
Sellers is,
And he's somewhat forgotten today, isn't he?
well, I don't know about that, but he's there in the analytic tradition.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm not being just to that. I'm very sorry for it, but no, thank
Said
you.
something, so
Yes, yes, of course. No, but it's not very often used. Let's say it's not very often used. And also the distinction, like Christian was yesterday speaking about consciousness. Consciousness has different senses as well. It can mean a field of phenomenal events. Let's say it also can mean an ego, which is a pole. Not Pole in the sense of Polish person, but a point of reference of all these phenomenal events. And I tend to agree with most of us, in this case I have to say us, not man, that collective egos don't exist, at least they haven't been detected so far. Maybe you put your finger on a possibility or on an avenue of a discovery like this in the nearest future, but so far we don't have any respectable knowledge about any collective egos. But collective contents are there, are plenty of them. So it's worth dwelling on. Whether it's volatile or whether it's solid, it's worth dwelling on in any case.
Okay, so many thanks to our speaker.
I just want to give you one final literature reference, if you don't mind. Good philosophy can sometimes be found in novelists, and as far as maybe better philosophy than philosophers sometimes, as far as social action or collective action which transcends the individual yearnings, individual appetites, individual longings and wishes and desires of every individual involved goes, those causes and states of social action. There's a novelist, a French novelist by the name of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, which should be read by every social philosopher, and especially his first novel, Le Vol de Nuit, Night Flight, which is just about this, about the cause transcending individuals, the cause you have to believe in and have to act on in any case, come what may. Thank you.